Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Bethany Maddox, and I'm a member of the customer care team here at Vitech Corporation. I will be your host during today's webinar as Warren Smith and Jim Obermeyer present how to supercharge your projects with Core 9. Our program today is sponsored by Vitech Corporation, a 21-year-old company that offers model-based software and services. Before we get started, I'd like to review a few technical details. First, questions. Please feel free to submit your questions at any time using the question and chat function in the GoToWebinar window. We will be monitoring these throughout today's event, and we plan to respond to questions at the end of the webinar, so stay tuned. Second, recording. The webinar is being recorded today. If you have technical difficulties during the presentation or would like to share this with a coworker, an online archive with this presentation will be available within 24 hours of the live version. Now let me introduce our presenters. Warren Smith is a senior account executive at Vitech Corporation and a qualified systems engineer. He has 25 years experience working on mil-aero and commercial projects. He has worked in many facets of the field, including leading systems teams, teaching systems analysis for university extension programs, working for tool vendors, and even starting and operating his own MBSE company, which grew to 7 employees at its height. He has a deep knowledge of systems engineering and model-based systems engineering tools. Jim Obermeyer is Vitech's Vice President of Business Development. Prior to joining Vitech, Jim was the principal of Sales Leakage Consulting Incorporated. He has been a VP of Sales and Marketing at several software companies, and he is an author and co-author of 4 books on sales and marketing and is a frequent speaker at industry events. Now, I'll turn over the mic to Jim and Warren. Welcome, and thank you both for joining us.
Thank you, Bethany. It was a great introduction. We appreciate it very much. Warren and I have got this great program today, how to supercharge your projects and the benefits of Core. And I'd like to preface the start today just with why are we doing this program? Well, Warren and I were out at INCOSE IS in June in Philadelphia. And at the booth, there were a lot of people walking up that had used Core. I mean, we had people go back as far as Core 2. We had people that knew Jim Long and David, and knew so many of our employees. And they said, well, I use Core 2 and I use Core 4 and 6 and even 7. And tell us about what's new. And that was the genesis, so to speak, of this webinar today. That we can show you what's new and how this great product has matured through the years. So Warren is going to take us through some of our objectives, and then we'll have plenty of time at the end to talk about the system itself and address some specific questions you might have. Warren, let's get started and have some fun with this today.
That sounds great, Jim. Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks, Bethany, for the intro. Yeah, it was amazing actually at the IS. It was surprising how many of our previous customers didn't know about some of the really awesome features that we introduced even in Core 8. So today we're hoping to have something of interest no matter what your role, whether you're a department head or a manager, or certainly if you're a systems engineer. I think that you'll probably see something that will be of interest today. Now, if you're new to Core, if you've never used Core before, that's okay. We're going to spend a couple of minutes on kind of a very brief introduction so you can kind of get introduced to the Core 4 systems engineering domains that are supported in the tool. And otherwise, I think you're going to see some things that are very interesting. It may even look like a whole new tool to you after today.
Great.
Managers,
let's take a look at this. Yeah, let's get into the first one, the managers portion. I really, this Core 9 has got some aspects to it that are just very different and really get the managers involved in the projects.
Yeah, it's true. Core has always had the ability to output data about the project. Of course, when you're doing requirements and design work and keeping test methods and so forth, it seems like that information should be available to create status reports and so forth. And it always has been, but today we're actually going to show how to do that. So you're going to see some really interesting information that will be interesting to the managers regarding dashboards, statuses, getting auto email reports from core and that kind of thing. The other thing that's really important is the ability to do modeling and simulation and the productivity enhancements that provides an organization along with reuse libraries. We've been talking about reuse libraries now in several of the webinars over the last couple of months. I've shown how to build reuse libraries using file-based models, but today we're going to talk about the use of the cross-project relationship to actually have those reusable artifacts of your product variants inside of a core library. And you know, the productivity gains are phenomenal with that. We'll talk more about that. Now, from an engineer's perspective, if you're an engineer, there's some really nice ease-of-use features that were introduced in Core 8 that, as Jim mentioned, as you mentioned, Jim, we found that a lot of people just didn't know about. So I'm going to have a brief demo, and I'm going to show some of the drag and drop drawing capabilities and copy and paste and that kind of stuff. We have some features that we introduced in Core 9 in the error finding area. We call it dynamic diagnostics. The tool actually keeps track of your system development and literally shows you where you have omissions in your design. It's awesome, and it really lets you find those omissions during the analysis phase so you can correct them so they don't surface as defects later on in integration. You can see here, I won't read off each of these, but you can see that we're going to talk about simulation and sharing your data over the internet with web-based products and just a number of different kinds of things.
This Core 9 has really turned into the engineer's best friend in many respects with these latest advances, don't you think? Just the notification, some of the new things, of the dashboard that you're going to show us in a few minutes, which I can't wait to see. Again, this is really turning into that best friend of the engineer.
Yeah, I think that's it's not a bad phrase. I mean, Core is a mature product, but a lot of people have seen it as really a tool that a smaller group of people use, but really that's not true. With Core 9, you'll see that it can be used by a much broader group of people within the organization, and it provides a lot of benefits to the organization. For kind of an overview for anyone that's online that is not familiar with Core, let me just spend a moment here and kind of introduce the tool. Here's kind of the way it works. There's a central repository with Core's model-based systems engineering tool that's shared by a number of different people, and you can see that that each person, each engineer or manager on the team may have a different view. This person is doing some graphical-based modeling, some behavior modeling. This person over here is doing architecture, again, graphically. This person's working with text, maybe requirements or generating documents. There's simulation, verification, validation work. All these people can share these different artifacts, and Core actually does manage graphical and textual data both, and you'll see that. But we represent this underlying shared repository as the sphere, and what you'll find is that the Core repository that's shared among all those team members actually does handle all 4 systems engineering domains in one integrated model. People think of requirements often as being a separate thing, but it's not. The requirements are captured, they're textual, they can be viewed hierarchically, but they also drive behavior and functions within the system. So when you have a requirement for the system to do something, you can actually get very rich graphical representations of how the system will actually do that. And those behaviors can then be implemented by the architecture. So one can take your functional behavior or your state model behavior, and you can allocate it to the hardware and the software portions of your design. You can also, in the architecture, capture all the interfaces. Finally, every system has to be tested, so there's a verification validation domain for people to verify that their architectural components do what what they were intended to do, and that the system, and validate that the system does what the user needs. So all of this stuff is traced together, and CORE is a tool that does what systems engineers need it to do. It's the systems engineer's tool, and it's all in one integrated fashion. Now the thing that's, here's a screenshot of CORE, and we will have a short demo during this, but just to kind of orient the new folks, over here, this is the Explorer view with all the different classes or folders that represent those 4 domains I just mentioned. The architectural domain is in the component folder, and the behavior is in the function folder, and so forth, requirements, and here's verification. When you're inside any one of these folders, there's a list of all the elements that are residing in that folder. And if you're clicked on one of these elements, you'll get all the information associated with that element. You'll get the diagrams or the text associated with it. So just by way of introduction to the new folks that aren't familiar with CORE, that's kind of what CORE is all about. And now we'll go into some more of the detailed information. One of the things that is important is that in addition to the core 4, the domains that I just mentioned, systems engineers also need to do trade studies, and they need to manage risks. So I wanted to spend a few minutes on each of these. The trade studies, our ability with CORE to actually build virtual prototypes of your system and execute the system using a virtual prototype during analysis instead of spending as much money on real prototypes. That's a really key benefit. It's been there for a long time, but one of the things that we learned at in COSI is that not as many people are using that as could benefit. The other thing is that in Core 9 we introduced a lot of new risk management capabilities. So I'm going to talk about the risks as well. I know this is an area that you've been very interested in recently, Jim, the virtual prototyping.
Yes, it is. The prototyping. You know, we heard about this a couple of weeks ago when we were out seeing that customer down in San Diego, and how enthused they were. Now they were on Core 7, right?
Mm-hmm. They were.
And because of the government and upgrading and what have you, and it really jumped them up to say they've got to get into Core 9 to get some of these new things. And virtual prototyping is one of those areas that they just hadn't explored that much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is surprising, and in the olden days, long before I was with the company, actually, they used to sell. We used to sell Core Sim as a separate product, but it's all integrated now. And with Core 9, we've actually put the simulation button right up here on the toolbar. It's the 5th button in. So whenever you're in a behavior model, here's a fairly complex one that's actually included as a sample with your core, so all core users out there have this. It's the Patriot missile example. You can just go to any one of these functions and then click on this button, and you'll get the simulator. Every time you use the simulator, you reset it first, and then you hit the run button. And what you'll see is that the tool will actually go through and do a simulation of whatever model you were on. And it's really kind of amazing when you stop and think about it, because it accommodates all the triggered behavior. So if you have one function that is waiting for a datum or a trigger from another function, then it will wait. It may be enabled, but it will wait, and it will show up in like this little yellow and so forth. If you have data pipe constraints, if you have a 10100 megahertz Ethernet instead of a gigabit Ethernet, then that slows the system down. You can see the timeline up here stretch out as the system executes. We also have resource constraints. So if you have a system where you have, say, a system like Space, this happens a lot. Their hardware is qualified. They can't change it. They need to add new functionality. Well, they can actually put up here as a resource the speed of their processors. It's a 40 MIP machine or whatever, and then if they over allocate it, it will show up as red. And then there's a transcript at the bottom as well. This particular one has a couple of different I paged down and took another screenshot of this, but you can see how it goes out. You can actually modify your architecture, reallocate your functions to different components. Should this be implemented hardware or software? And that will allow you to simulate your system performance and make sure that the system performs as you need before you start going to hardware or to software. It's really cool. And in fact, you can even do Monte Carlo simulation. By putting an iterative loop around any behavior, you can run it 10 or 100 or 1,000 times and actually see this number change as the probabilistic values of the non-deterministic portions of the system vary. So if a particular function is a 100 millisecond function, but it might range on a normal distribution, you can put that in. And so it really is a powerful capability that can save companies real money that very few of our customers are fully utilizing.
Would you tell people what you mean by Monte Carlo? I'm not so sure everybody understands.
Sure. So what a Monte Carlo simulation is if you have a probabilistic distribution of potential outcomes for a simulation. So let's say that you have a system that's supposed to perform something in 3 seconds, but based upon bandwidth, it might take a little bit longer. It might take 3.5 seconds, that kind of thing. Well, we can simulate all that. And you can run your system 100 different times or more using a Monte Carlo approach, and then see what the distributed values are. Oh, well, it did come in at about 3 seconds, or maybe it was a bit slow over the average. So that's what Monte Carlo lets you do.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question. And the other thing that the simulator allows you to do, which is really neat, is that you don't have to do any scripting. You just press that button and it will simulate for you. But scripting can be accommodated. And on this secondary tab, in fact, my buddy Ron was helping me out with this, you can actually add logic to this in the form of scripts. It's best if you take a look at these examples, you might be able to easily see that these are pretty easy to understand. If you want to, we certainly have a scripting class that can, if you get into it this deeply, that we can help you with. But the value of this is that you can actually have data entry windows, you can get simulation results. This shows if you run the simulator, this model, the Patriot missile model at your work, you'll see that there's some launcher utilization rate that you'll get out of this. So the virtual simulation, the virtual prototyping, is a really powerful way for companies to test out their system designs without spending as much money on real prototypes.
Wasn't the term somebody used a few weeks ago, fail early and often? Is that what one of the engineers used there in Seal Beach?
Yeah, that's true, and then the other side of that is so that when you get later on, you don't fail. So it is true. The second aspect that is kind of 4 + 2 domains is the risk domain. Should we talk about risk?
Yes, please. This is a subject that seems to be coming up, and at INCOSE there were several presentations just about MBSE and risk, and I've got one of them here in front of me today, High Performance Technologies Incorporated. It's got several things on their website, and they presented on this topic several times. How model-based systems engineering, business case considerations, an enabler of risk reduction. It's very interesting, and it seems like we're right up there in the forefront of doing this. Let's see what we've got here.
Yeah, I didn't see that presentation, but I have been talking to quite a few people in my area, and some of them are actually doing risk-based design. So every week the department heads get together and they have risk matrices they've created, and it's almost like an agile systems engineering approach where they tackle the highest risk issues first. And the thing that I find interesting is that it's a very it's a high liability industry. If there's a mistake, it can be very costly. There's regulatory compliance concerns, And so they actually run their design that way, and it's very effective. And the thing that I like about Core 9 is that we've enhanced what we provide in the risk area that helps them out. So if you look at this example, there's 3 different risks here. This is for a ventilator system, so it's a life-critical system. It helps someone breathe. And this is all out of the box. You can go in there and you can fill in your risk description. You have a drop-down menu where you can identify whether it's mitigated or not, open and closed, status. So you can actually, instead of making PowerPoint quad charts, you can actually just update the status here and then have Core generate a report for you, which I'll show you in a minute. This actually inserts a battery backup system into the device so that the pump will run on its own even if there's a power brownout or that kind of thing. You can capture things like mitigation costs. This particular example says it's 32 man-hours to implement this, and you can see that the risk itself is related to a particular requirement. There's a secondary tab which I didn't put a slide up for, but you'll see where you can identify likelihood, consequences, that kind of thing. Now,
isn't this really of importance? I mean, I can think of a few companies in the oil industry that don't have anything to show Congress and others that they've really looked at some of their actions and looked at the risks involved with some of their technology, and this provides a trail of documentation. It provides proof that risks were looked at and mitigated, doesn't it?
It does, yeah, that's a good point. A lot of times with regulatory compliance issues, it's important to provide an audit trail that shows that you considered and addressed various factors, risk factors or others. And it's true, you're right, it's true with energy, it's true with medical device, it's true in a number of different industries. And Core really provides a platform for that without having to go outside of your normal design process. And in Core 9, we added a new report called the Risk Report that you can access through the script button, and it gives you a number of options that you can choose from. And in fact, if you run this on any project, it will output a really nice Microsoft Word report. It shows you the date of the report and so forth, and these can be archived if you want. And it shows you the risk cube if you want it. This is where I mentioned on the secondary tab that the likelihood and consequence are set. There's the stoplight colors. There's also the very common risk table that shows the high, medium, and lows ranked in order. And but then what's really cool is that it also puts out the risk details. So you can actually show all the detailed information. You can have this available on a regular basis in archive, and as the status changes, people can actually go through and audit that if necessary. It is a growing concern in our more regulated industry environment now. Now, I'd like to talk about this next. I'm really excited about the audit delivery. Wouldn't it be great if you could have your risk report, but instead of just running it and having to remember to do it, wouldn't it be awesome if Core could send that to you automatically, on a regular basis, and it would be available for you in your inbox when you needed it, or in your CM system.
You can have it sent to different project managers, senior management. You can choose who it goes to, can't you?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. People will have their own set of reports that they might be interested in, and with Core, you can actually set this up and have the tool do that for you. And that way, the reports are finding you, and you're not having to go and ping engineers to generate stuff for you, or if you're a manager, or go and do it yourself. And this is a capability that's been around for a while. We did get some help from our professional services group to set up this specific one. I'll talk about that. But if I actually wanted that risk report that I showed you a moment ago emailed to me, all I have to do is go into the Tools area and select the Task Scheduler. And then I can identify the specific script that I want to run. Now, I had our professional services group, and in a couple of hours they were able to do this for me. They wrote a script to create an email, and that script calls the risk report script that I showed a few minutes ago. So what happens is that I can set this up. I can create a new task or edit it, and here I run that email script. I tell it which project I want to run against, and then this is cool, I can give it a time. So I can actually I have it set up right now. This is a military clock. So every morning at 1 a.m., Monday through Friday, it generates a report, and it sends it. There's a value for the email address, and it sends that email to me. I can have it set up to do it every hour or every time the user logs in. But what's really cool is that you get an email just like this. So this is a screenshot of the email. I actually was testing it, so it doesn't say 1 a.m. I was testing it at 10 in the morning. But at any rate, you can see that here's the report, the same one that I just showed you before. Here's the auto text that was created by the script. So the basics are there. We can easily set this up. You need some help with our professional services group, but I'll tell you what, Jim, I'm excited about this because it really does. It's the promise of what CORE can do, and people don't necessarily know that they can get this kind of thing out.
Yeah, it's amazing when we go out to talk to people and they ask what's new, and they don't expect very much, and they get so excited. As that company did in San Diego a couple of weeks ago, that was on Core 7. They get so excited that they should have upgraded last year, but now they're going to jump one, and it's really interesting to see mature systems engineers get excited about new things like this, and anything like this that takes away them having to do something manual is a good thing. Then the engineer can spend time on engineering and not on documentation and chasing memos and creating all this stuff, and then they'll copy the right person, and who did it go to, and all that nonsense that can be done for them.
Exactly, and the next thing's going to be, I think people are going to be even more excited about. There's an ability. We've moved with Core 9. We've moved information up to the 4, and so there's a capability that that any of our customers can create, and that's to make dashboards. Here's an example of a project dashboard that I actually put together using out-of-the-box capabilities of Core, plus I created an Excel spreadsheet myself that we can share with people that actually read data as it comes out of Core. So I'll show you how I did it in a minute, but let me talk about what this dashboard shows. It shows 3 different areas: requirements, functions, and verification methods. Every company or every person might have their own, and you can easily craft these. But just by using the simple CSV output, the common separated variable that generates the spreadsheets that we've kind of put onto the menus in Core 9, I create some very simple exports that export all the requirements and identify which ones have been implemented by behavior or specifying constraining a component. So basically, a requirement list is a checklist of all the things the system must do, and you know that the system can't be complete until somewhere every requirement has been accommodated in the system design. What this shows is that there are 90 requirements in this system, and of those 90, only 20 of them have been accommodated in the design, leaving 70 unimplemented requirements. So you can see in the pie chart here, it was generated as part of Excel, that the vast majority of these requirements are not yet done. In fact, a manager can look at this, and if 90 requirements represents the complete set of requirements, he or she can see that we're just above a fifth of the way through the system design activity. So you can actually get very simple percentage completes and that kind of thing. Similarly with functions, you have a list of behaviors. There's 27 total behaviors that the system needs to do. 11 of them are not yet assigned to a piece of hardware or software to be implemented by the detailed design teams. That means that we're 60% of the way through that portion, so that's better. Finally, over here, this shows that we have, of course, 90 requirements. Every one of them need to be tested. They need to have a test method associated with them. But we can see that there are still 75 unverified requirements. So we're only 16% complete on that. So I'm stoked about the dashboards because it's something that Core has always been able to do. It's now much easier with the advances that we made in Core 9 for anyone to do this. And the way I did it, just so people can see, is that I exported that information to the CSV using the menu. I created some maps. We have quite a few maps here you can use out of the box. They may suit your needs. You can also create your own with the Save button here. I created 3 dashboard exports. The maps can be standardized, and you can import them. You can move the maps into any of your projects if you have standard reports that you like. And then this map here for the requirements, it exports the requirement name. I selected the requirements class earlier. It exports the name of the requirement, the requirements that are the basis of functions, and also the requirements that specify various components. And by outputting that, I get a very simple spreadsheet like this. I did it on all 3, and then I created the dashboard that reads that data. Very simple, very easy, very, very powerful.
It's I look at that, and this really helps in reporting the business case, the progress, the lack of progress, or it allows people to celebrate the progress that they've made
Right.
as their project progresses.
It's true, and it provides visibility that on percent complete that is accurate and specific. And often that's kind of done with a thumbnail type approach. So, okay. So the next thing I want to talk about is our completeness and consistency checks. We actually have dynamic diagnostics. That last piece was kind of for the manager, but how does the engineer know when he or she is working in the model that that they're done? Well, if you have a model-based systems engineering tool, the tool should be able to tell you. And in fact, Core does tell you. Tells you that
Warren, before you go on here, what is George doing here on the slide? Why is the founding father intruding in our program today?
I must have a warped brain. I thought it was obvious to me, but it's the unfinished portrait. So Core will tell you when your system design is complete, and that was my mnemonic.
All right. Go ahead. I just found it humorous.
Yeah, that's good. It's true. Anyway, so we've added a new tab to Core 9. In addition to being able to, in the property sheet, view the main attributes, you actually can get a list of all the different completeness and consistency errors that exist. So when you think about it, a requirement has to be verified. Well, if a requirement isn't linked to a test procedure, it will show up as an error here to be corrected. This is a good one. This guy is missing a number of interfaces. It doesn't actually. It's a component that doesn't do anything. It's a component without any behavior associated with it, and this is dynamic. So as you make changes to your model, it corrects these and takes them off the list. So a lot of times when people are working, they think, oh, I need to do this, and they go work on that. No, I need to do that, and they go take care of that. But then they can click on this little tab, and it will give them a list of anything that still needs to be done. So we call that operating at think speed. So this is think speed diagnostics. Now you can also get a report for the whole project if you want to. You don't have to do it, element by element. So down here on the Manage button, by right mouse clicking on one of these, you can find the consistency and completeness checks. So I selected all diagnostics, and it generates another report for me. And it shows you for everything, for components and behaviors and tests and functions and requirements, all the domains. It shows you all of the different completeness and consistency checks, that omissions that you need to do. So when you think about it, Core is telling you where the omissions are in your system design. Dangling interfaces, that satellite example, that it was a component that performed no functions. You can't really specify something if it doesn't do anything. So by correcting the omissions in Core in the system design phase, in the analysis phase, what Core is doing is it's preventing the introduction of defects that will surface during integration and test when it's really expensive to find and correct. So
how long does it really take to do this report, Warren? Come on, is it a big deal? Is it a
Yeah, no, this report was seconds to generate.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, everybody says, "Oh, this is really easy to do," but when you say easy, I want to make sure it is easy.
It is easy. In fact, let's talk about easy. Some of the Core 8 features that obviously are in Core 9 and have been enhanced as well with some advanced navigation. A lot of our older Core users aren't familiar with them. So I'm going to switch over to Core, and I'm going to show some of the ease of use features. I'll create a new project here.
So you're starting with a clean sheet and creating a project from scratch in the next couple of minutes.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm going to show some of the drag and drop features and
okay.
And yeah, I mean, I'm not going to create a brilliant model in 2 minutes, but I want to make sure people see see some of these capabilities that we have. So I always like to fill out the properties for the project when I first create it. So I'll put our customer in any town, USA here. Okay, so let's look at, I'll be talking a little bit more about reuse. People that are watching these webinars know that that's important. Important to me and hopefully to them. So a lot of times when we start with a project, we don't necessarily start top down like the traditional systems engineering view. We might start with an existing product line. And so with this example, just a few minutes, I'm going to start with a flex fuel car. So this would be a car that can run that runs on compressed natural gas or gasoline. We have a lot of liquefied natural gas and stuff here in this country now. So I'll just stick with that. So if you look at this particular element, I like the flow interface block diagram to do a lot of my work, and it's part of the Spectrum tool. This car is going to have a number of components. And Core has these really nice drag and drop features for creating components. And I can actually literally open it up, and I can edit information here. So I can say that the car is going to have a driver's, where the driver sits with the dashboard and stuff. I'll call that the station. And I can enter my descriptions right here. In fact, I'm going to put in here that the driver can be supported by auto steering. So I'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, so we have the ability to enter all the data, but you know what? If you want to go faster, you can hold down the control button and drag and drop, and just say, well, the car also has an engine, and the car also has a transmission, and whatever else the car or your system might have. And you can just build it up very, very easily. Now, when I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking, I mentioned auto steering. You're familiar, Jim, with those cars. I've seen ads on TV, Audis or something, and they can like park themselves.
Yeah, and we're getting we're seeing some experimentation going on, especially in California, of cars. They're steering their own, they're finding their own ways down the roads and the freeways.
Yeah, it's true. Google has been testing a car like that for a long time. So I can easily create new functions using this tab over here on the right side. We have key entities and all entities. I can add steering, throttle, brake, and other drivers' functions. And this is a component. These are functions, but check this out. I can actually take this and I can drag and drop these functions onto this component. And when I do that, I get a context-sensitive list of just the relationships that components and functions can have. And as you can see, functions can be allocated to components. So I just created relationships, not using this, this more complex property sheet. It's not that bad, but it's not as fast as this. In fact, since we're going to talk about auto steering, I'm going to create a risk as well. So I can just come down here and I'm going to put the auto steering risk here, and I'll also add that into this component and see I get the list of whatever relationships are available. So let's see. I'm thinking about this risk right now. Let me use the new feature to jump to element to open up that risk in a new Explorer window. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. It'll leave this window the same, but we'll open up a new one, and I can type in my information about the auto steering risk. I can identify whether it's mitigated or not. I'm going to say it's mitigated. My mitigation plan is going to be to work with an insurance company so that people can be properly insured. What I'm thinking is that this would be a capability that the car would auto steer when it's in cruise control. So it may have brakes, and it would have to have sensors and stuff, but you get the idea. I want to really show off the navigation features and some of these real new and easy to use capabilities. If I go back to functions, I can also do the same thing with steering. I can actually, well, you know what? I'll put this one in the current window and create a new steering capability here. If I want to, I can add a requirement as well. So I'll go ahead and I'll do this over here. I can do the new node thing, but I'll come over here to do requirements. And if you have a bigger screen, it's a little bit easier. But we have the auto steering requirement. And the thing that's really cool about this, I won't put any information in there right now, but I will open it up in another window. Something that that people don't really think about with Core is that you can actually make relationships between windows as well. So I'm going to go ahead and have my my functions over here. I have my requirements over here. I can literally drag and drop between these windows. So if you have dual screens, that kind of thing, it's very, very easy to think about your system design and go through and build the relationships and the diagrams that you need, and when you're all done, you'll have your traceability. You can generate reports out of this. For instance, now, just with this very simple model that I've created, I can come down here and I can create the system definition document, one of Core's most powerful tools, because it's a very simple report to generate. And a lot of these will be empty, but oops, I didn't include any diagrams. But you'll see that it populates the information based upon all the information entered in the model. So I can create a table of contents in Word by hitting the F9 button, and it populates this stuff for me automatically. So I'm not going to show you more of that, but there's just one last ease of use thing that I really want to show people, and that is getting information out. If I look at the functional area, I can look at this in a tabular format, and I can modify this using column editing, and to get something out, I can literally hit this little corner, hit copy, and then I can paste it into spreadsheet or Word or whatever I want. So it's very easy to get information out of Core, but you have to know that the feature is there. Okay, so that took a few minutes more than I was hoping, but let's talk a little bit about some of these other features, shall we? So notification of changes. So Core 9 actually has a notification center. You can access it down here, and what it will do is, if you're working on a server, it will show you all the changes that are of interest to you that other people are making. It doesn't show you your own changes, but it shows you who made it, when it was made, and then a description of what changed. And you can follow these by right mouse clicking on any element that you want to follow, and through the Manage window identify that. So that's a really important feature that helps engineers see what changes that may affect them have been created or introduced into the model by other people.
And you can change whoever these go to, right? You can make a decision which manager gets what, how often they get it.
Yeah, this one is actually for the engineer, right? And so each engineer will set up their own list of changes that they will follow. This isn't really a management feature. This is really a feature for the engineers using the tool. The dashboard and those are really where the manager will go for their capabilities, their status. Now we have some new features for modifying and locking down the design. We have this lock element, of course, and you can lock projects, folders, or elements. Bethany was helping me understand that project managers have permission, project administrators have permissions to lock projects, and then system administrators can lock folders and elements. But we have in Core 9 some new lock when set and some version features for attributes. So now you can actually have an attribute where when you enter the information for the very first time, it gets locked. And that information is shown here, and I'm sure I'll get a question. There is a backdoor that no one knows about. If you need it, you'll have to contact support to get it. Now, TeamView, this is a capability that has been enhanced in Core 9. It's a web-based view of your system. What was it that you were telling me about the other day? You were talking to someone, and they wanted just like 3 engineers or something who were going to be tool manipulators, or
yeah. So many of these departments have. We were talking to a department that had 15 managers, 15 systems engineers. A couple have used the product Core for 3/4 of the day. 5 or 6 of the engineers want to be able to pop in and out at will. And then there are other people who just want to take a look at different aspects of it and the reporting. And it comes back to the whole team. You know, too often in the past, Core was looked at as a product that 1 or 2 engineers actually used within the department. And we're finding now, sorry for the phone ringing in the background, that'll stop in a second, but now we're finding that whole departments are accessing it in different ways, and they're using TeamView.
Yeah, so that's a good point. We don't want to exclude people from access to all this data. So we have Core2Net, which is a separate product that allows review and commenters to look at the system and submit changes into the model. But with every version of, with every client of Core, that comes with TeamView, and you access TeamView again through the scripts, and you can see the TeamView option. You can choose which diagrams you want in TeamView, and this is really for those people who are reviewers only, who need access to it to see what the design is, but they won't necessarily be making changes. And what it does is it creates a website that you can actually link up on your intranet, and it shows all the different categories of information. Here's the components, and by clicking on these, you can navigate through. And you can see the textual data, the property sheets and requirements text and that kind of thing. But you can also see all the graphics based upon the selections that you made before. So this is the same graphic that you saw that was in Core itself. Now, something that's really neat about TeamView is that you can set up your own hyperlinks. So if you have like internal procedures, if you're doing ISO traceability and you want to be able to demonstrate to an auditor that, yeah, you do follow your procedures, well, gosh, you know, in any one of these elements, you can actually highlight text and insert a hyperlink. And it can be a file, like an internal file, or it can be a URL to another site. I have an example here of a PDF that I linked in, and when you click on this, it will actually bring up in this frame. It's really neat. This is a live PDF of this Core 9 document, and so you can scroll through and you can read the document, and so you can actually integrate your system model with your other internal documents, procedural or otherwise, guidelines and that kind of thing. Okay, I'm going to talk briefly about reuse library. We're running out of time here, so I'm going to go a little bit faster, but we're almost done. So with the reuse library, back in the Core 9 rollout, I showed how you can have a file-based reuse library where you incorporate requirements, designs, every element into a set of products, product lines, subsystems, that kind of thing. And it really is an immense productivity increase. So, you know, once you've done the work to design the system, it would be better to reuse that and make modifications. So when you bring in say a product or a product line or a subsystem, it can come in with all these different elements. You're not just reusing one thing, requirements, whatever. You're reusing all of this. Now, the file-based approach is a very powerful approach, but Core 9 introduced cross-project relationships. So now we can do the exact same thing, but the reuse library is actually resident in the repository, in a controlled aspect of the repository. And so cross-project relationships support reuse, but they also support baselining and product revisions and enterprise architecture and all these different kinds of options, contractor boundaries, and so forth. So the way you get to it, you'll see the related projects here, but the way you actually make cross-project links is to have those reusable projects in the same repository, and when you actually make relationships, you use this for this option, pardon me, you actually select the project that you're going to add to. So the cross project is shown up in blue text so that you can see, but essentially what's happening here is that this component, this function, is being allocated to a satellite in another project. Isn't that cool? Isn't that cool? So the satellite in one project is detecting the threat and sending it down to the Patriot missile battery on the ground. Here's a slide that. Go ahead.
This really came up a lot when we were talking to people at INCOSE. When they saw that, they came up with their own ideas. You mean I can do this and I can do that, I can reuse this, and whether it was a vehicle or satellites or regardless, the lights went on and they got excited because they didn't have to do all this manual labor with usually which follows with reentry of data and information. Mistakes are made and carried over, and it's one of those subtle things that have gotten so many people excited.
It's true, and there's a lot of organizations that have need for this. Anyone that's working with an external system that they don't necessarily control, that interface can be defined and maintained in its own project, and you can use cross-project to support that. But the last thing I'm going to talk about, I'm going to go through this kind of fast. but it will be on the webinar. You can go back and look at this if you want to. I did show the doors connector with the Core 9 rollout, but I only showed one example. So I wanted to do some screenshots of all these different scenarios. Now, all of these different scenarios require some predefined attributes to be placed into Core to map to doors. And just like the dashboards, those attribute values and so forth can be saved off and imported through the XML mechanisms. So when you're importing information from doors, you'll have some sort of a doors module, and we have the object ID and the paragraph headings and the paragraph text and so forth. You can break that out with a view that you would create that breaks these out. So there's the object ID and the paragraph heading and the heading text and so forth. And then you use the spreadsheet exporter to export that data. Once you have the CSV file, you use the CSV import that is under the File menu, and you import it into Core using the Doors import, the Doors connector, and you'll have these options associated with the wizard. The thing that's nice about it is that the Doors connector recreates pardon me, the hierarchical structure with our refines relationship. So whatever your requirements hierarchy was in Doors, it will be replicated in Core. And then it populates all of those requirements, and you get all the textual description. Here are those attributes that I mentioned that you will have to set up. But it captures the object ID and all these different kinds of data that you might want. The thing that's nice is that changes from Core can be round-tripped. A lot of times our customers will bring in system requirements from Doors, do analysis, behavior analysis, allocation, all that kind of work, and derive subsystem or subassembly requirements from the analysis they do in Core. Well, then those derived requirements, they don't exist in Doors. They need to be sent back out to Doors. So when you create those new requirements, you can see that I've shown some changes and some rationale in red. We have our own audit trail, of course, but these can be round-tripped back out using the Doors connector, using the export to Doors, same kind of system, and then incrementally updated in the Doors repository. This is actually not an example of a new requirement, but one that was changed inside of Core. Now, that example with new requirements, we do actually export derived, refined, and specified requirements, so those new derived requirements can come out, and then you can place them from Core into Doors, and then the Doors folks can create wholly new requirements documents for publication if Doors is their requirements system of record. Okay, so we're running about 6 minutes past time, but I think we probably have some time for some questions.
Yes, it looks like everybody is still here. I'm glad that everybody hung in with us here today. I think what you've shown is the tip of the new things in Core, some of the most exciting things that the engineers have told us that they've wanted. This has come from the community out there as a whole. Bethany, do we have any questions that people might have submitted that Warren or Ron could answer for us today?
We sure do. There have been quite a few questions coming in, so thank you to everybody who sent those in. If you haven't yet, it's not too late. You can go ahead and send your question to me in the chat feature or the question feature in GoToWebinar, and I'll get those into the list. So we are going to start with one that I hope is an easy one for you, Warren. This question is from Deanna, and she's asking, how long does it take to create a risk report?
It takes seconds to create the risk report. The biggest time is to actually just fill in those 10 or 12 fields with risk data. And Deanna, since you did ask that, I'm going to go ahead and show you where that is. If you look at the risk, can people still see my screen? There's a secondary tab here. So you can fill in this information, and then the secondary tab is where you'll identify the consequence and likelihood of the risk, and also the type of risk, and some other information as well.
Okay, so it sounds like if I set everything, then the report is actually really simple. Just run it.
That's correct. You
Great.
just come down and click on it here, and it just simply runs.
Fantastic. Thank you, Warren. Our next question is from Craig. And Craig wants to know if data can be shared simultaneously with multiple users.
Yes, in fact, that's the way core server is set up. So the way that you have large project teams work together is through the core server. The chart that I showed actually near the beginning is real time. So if Bethany and Ron and I are all working in the same server, and there's, say, a misspelling that gets corrected by, say, Ron, if that element is on my screen, as soon as that screen refreshes, that spelling correction will appear on the element in my diagram. It's actually really cool. It's really, really cool.
So all of the diagrams across the whole spectrum are updated simultaneously and ready to go. You don't have to go through and manually do each diagram and fool around.
No. And so unlike if you have some people working in Visio and some people working in another tool and so forth, you have to manually propagate changes. In Core, we have what's called one version of the truth. That was my buddy Mac told me that, and it's true because we give you the ability to see exactly what the system design looks like at any given time.
So Warren, I'm going to put my my customer support hat on for just a minute because Craig also asked about check-in, check-out procedures. So I'll go ahead and just add that with the core server, there's just no need to do that. It's always live all the time. If you don't have a core server, you can still work collaboratively, and you'll find in our help tool information on how to do that. It does become a matter of trading data, but we've provided guidance for those who choose not to employ a core server, but the core server is hands down the way to go.
Mm-hmm. And the project notification that we talked about is actually, I'm trying to get back to that, is actually a mechanism that you can see what may have changed along the way.
Yes, the notification center is a great way to be aware of what's going on with the rest of the team. It's, a very social media sort of way. Okay. Let's go on to the next one. I have another one of those, is it really that easy sort of questions. This one's from Henry, and he's saying, how long does it take to do the dashboards that you're doing? You showed us how you do it. How long does it take when you do it live?
Well, I had to, the first time I did it took me a couple of hours because I needed to kind of think through what I wanted to output and that kind of stuff. We can certainly share the maps and the dashboard that we have with you. Once you do it, I suspect that if you have that, it'll probably take you 30 minutes to create one that you like, and then it'll be a matter of asking managers what they want to see and thinking about how you'll pull the data out of Core to do that. And I'll tell you what, Ron and I and Bethany would be happy to help you think through that. It's fast.
Bethany, I see some how to do it questions up here, which we probably can't get through today. But if anybody wants to have their own private demonstration of any item within Core, they can go to Warren or yourself, right, or Ron, just to tell us, and we'll set something up for them so they can get a little private demonstration of some aspect that they find of use.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. We'd love to demonstrate any of these tools. If you're a current Core user and just have a really quick how do I do this question, call our support line, and I'd be happy to walk you through those. Our next question is from Ruben, and Ruben is asking, does the simulation provide distribution statistics such as mean, standard deviation, histograms, etc.?
Does it actually provide that data?
Mm-hmm.
That's a good question. I'm not sure if I know the answer, but before I pass anything off, let me show this, Ruben. If you look at a particular function here. Here's the duration, the functional duration, and that can be assigned. It can be assigned a value. It's going to be 10 milliseconds or whatever. Or the number can be the mean, and we have 20 different probabilistic distributions that you can choose from. So when you actually run the simulation, you will get random values based upon the distribution curve that you selected. And if you put an iteration around it and turn it into a Monte Carlo, that information, okay, so now I do know the answer, that information actually will be output in the transcript itself. So if actually, this model isn't really well set up for that, but if I actually run the simulation up here, then you'll get in the transcript, let me just actually see if I can do that. It's empty, so yeah, there's nothing. But you can see down here the transcript, and if I actually had a model, it would have run like you saw, and then that information would be here, and you'd be able to use that, pull it out into a spreadsheet or whatever, and get the information that you need out. Does anyone else have a better answer?
Yes, Warren, I think the Patriot missile example that is built into Core is a good sample that should show you both the use of you designating what they are as well as the transcript outputting and telling you what was there.
Yeah, so if you go to your Core installation directory and go to data samples directories, subdirectories, you'll find that there. Data samples.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and take a minute here and introduce to our audience Ron Kratzky. He's one of our senior systems engineers, and I see he has unmuted his microphone. So I'm wondering if he has a little something to add to what Warren and I have said about simulation.
I was just waiting for Warren to see if he would make a mistake here on this, but he did a great job. The thing you have to remember about Core Sim is that any individual functional block or functional item in there, you can set up the distribution for how long it takes that item to operate by one of those distributions that Warren showed. When you get the output file, if you were to run that through a Monte Carlo simulation, let's say you iterated your functional set 25 times or whatever, after you got that information out, you could then export that information to Excel and determine what the distribution is of the overall time for each of those 25 times it took for that series of functions to operate.
Right.
Great. Thank you for jumping in on this, Ron. I really appreciate it. Warren just about has this simulation ready to run. So
let's see if we can come up with a question that'll stump.
And let him run it.
Let's see if we can come up with a question that'll stump Ron here today. Oh, we're mischievous.
Well, I don't know. Something Ron's pretty hard. I've had to call him a time or two for some questions. Okay, here we go. We've got the simulation running. And any minute now, we're going to see a transcript. And there she is.
And you can see this number is different from the one that was in the screenshot, and that's because of the probabilistic nature that we just talked about. And as Ron mentioned, we can iterate this entire thing multiple times, 10, 100, 1,000 times, and then the transcript is available down here. I think we also have a transcript output in the Core 9 that you can show, as I recall. So you can turn that on and off and that kind of thing. Okay.
Great. Well, Ruben, we have quite a lot of input from the whole team here on this one. I hope that we answered that question. If we didn't, please call our support team, and we'd love to take the next step with you and make sure we answered that.
Support@vitechcorp.com.
Yes, that is my email, support@vitechcorp.com, and I am happy to take this question. Okay, our next question is from Craig. And I think we may have already answered this, but let's go back to it anyway. He was wondering if you can, he said, does it allow hooks to external models? I wonder if he's talking about cross-project relationships there, Warren.
Well, yes, that would actually be the mechanism for hooking into to other core models. If you want to hook into models outside of Core, we have a number of mechanisms that we can do that. There is an API which can be used in some cases, and then of course we always have the CSV import-export, which, as you can see after today, can be automated. So it's very It's very straightforward to do that once you've thought through what data you want to exchange and have it set up.
Okay, thanks. All right, last question, and this one is from James. And James wants to know if you have some sample projects that you could provide to show how you've used the risk relationships.
Yeah, in fact, that's a good question. I would actually, I don't know if we updated our, if we added a lot of risks to our 3 sample projects. When you come into Core, where I went into that data samples, there's 3 projects in there. There's the Patriot Missile, there's Fast Food Restaurant, which is a process model, which is kind of fun to watch them make hamburgers. And then there's the last one, which is the Geospatial Library. And so if contact us, was that Craig you said?
This is James.
James, if you look at those 3 and don't see what you want, just contact us, and you can send an email to me, wsmith@vitechcorp.com, and I'll be glad to send you the example that I used in the presentation today.
Okay, well that wraps it up. Thank you, Warren and Jim, and thank you, Ron, for being available there on a moment's notice to jump in and add some to the simulation question. We appreciate your availability. For everyone out there, if we weren't able to answer your question today, we will contact you directly to ensure that your question is answered. There are a few I chose to hold back and answer privately, so if we didn't answer them, we'll get to you by tomorrow and with some answers for those questions. If you have other questions or comments you didn't send in to us, we do invite you to post those on the forum at our community site. You'll find that at community.vitechcorp.com. As I mentioned before, a recording of today's webinar will be posted in the resources section of our website by the close of business tomorrow. Thank you everyone for joining us today. When we conclude this webinar, a survey will open on your screen, either in a new browser tab or in a new window. Please take a moment to provide us with feedback on today's presentation or on what topics you'd like to see covered in future webinars. Once again, thank you for joining us and have a great day.